Erev Tov Chavrim, I'm Stephen Ben-Nun. You're watching Israeli News Live. And friends, this evening, very interesting things that just by God's grace that He's opened my eyes more to, I should say. Much of it I'm pretty much aware of, but I'm sitting here watching all the arguing going back and forth over President Trump, what he did, what happened with the situation in Helsinki, Finland. Was he doing something treasonous? You have both sides. In fact, those of you that watch Israeli News Live, I know there's those of you in each camp. Those that hate him, those that love him, those that, well, he should have done better, whatever the case may be. And I really am beginning to realize that we are being played on a daily basis, whether it be Russia-phobia, whatever the case may be, Israel, etc. We are truly being played, and I'm wondering how many of you probably already are fully aware of this, especially about what I'm going to share with you on this, and something you may not be aware of. I don't know if you are aware of this or not, but it is Pope Francis that actually was the one that made Putin and Trump meet together. That's an interesting one. Probably most never even caught that. I didn't catch that myself, but it only goes to show how much in control Pope Francis is over this new world order, and yeah, he's still calling the shots of what's going on. But first, let's look at what's really happening. All right, now this is Strategic Cultured Online Journal Foundation. This was back in, July 6, 2018, I guess it is. I got to get this straight now. Maybe it's June 7, 2018. I'm used to European dates. European, they don't do the month first, they do the day, then the month, then the year. That's how they do it. Kind of is in order, isn't it? We do it though, the month, the date, and the year. And so I'm not sure which is which. Anyway, Trump-Putin summit flushes out the Russia-phobes. This is an article that just came out, and how that it really has, I say just came out. No, it didn't just come out. This is an article that came out a little while back, and that was really my whole purpose. Everybody that is so fearful of the Russia phobia and what's going on and the meddling in our elections, and we're completely obliterated to the fact that this was all a staged event. Wow. What? Are you serious? I'm very serious. This whole ordeal has been staged from the very beginning to do one thing, and that is this right here. What is the real ID? Trump administration enforces new identification cards to combat terrorism after a 13-year delay. Now, this was back in January 22nd of 2018 when this came out, but what was it coming out for? Again, they were using the Russia phobia, the Russia interfering in our elections, to be able to bring out the Real ID Act that was first started in 2005. This is a New World Order ID, and as you've seen on the video, the cover page there, we actually used a photo we found online showing the national ID card that they're wanting to have enforced by 2020. If you don't have it, you will not fly. You will not, a lot of things you won't be able to do. In fact, the article here says, newly minted documentation as part of the Real ID Act, the implementation of 2005 appropriation from Congress to fight the global war on terror under President George W. Bush. The law outlined the minimum security standards for state-issued driver license and identification cards following the 9/11 attacks in 2001. Remember what his dad kept saying? For a new world order. Yeah, something like that. You remember that? That's what we were going for. You know, head of the CIA, etc. Very, very disturbing. But anyway, Real ID was initially designed to keep U.S. citizens from holding multiple license, social security numbers, and allow government officials to check immigration standing. Federal agencies such as Transportation Security Administration, the TSA, will be unable to accept any ID that does not meet federal standard by October 1st, 2020. So this has all been a stage. It's been a play from the very beginning. After all, everybody meddles in everybody's elections around the world. Why all of a sudden is it a big deal that Russia meddled in Americans' elections? Well, because we needed to be able to force a new regulation. So while everybody is over there trying to strangle the next guy, no, you hate Trump, oh, you love Trump, oh, and you're going back and forth killing each other over this issue. When they say to you, oh, we're going to need a national ID so we don't have any more voter fraud around here. Okay, yes, give me mine. Like sheep to a slaughter. By the way, the actual meeting between Trump and Putin really had nothing even to do with the national or the Russia phobia. That was a different issue altogether. But they're able to expound on this because they had Trump make the statement of Russia really had nothing to do with it. He knew what he was saying. And even though I was really hoping for peace between Russia and the United States, after all, they're all playing for the same puppeteer. Even Putin has to make sure he obeys what the Pope of Rome says. Let me share with you what I found on this. I did a little investigative work today, and actually a lot of investigative work in order to uncover some of this, but I wasn't intending to go in this direction. This is on the dailybeast.com. Says Pope Francis wisely was wary of attaching his name alongside that of Patriarch Kirill. According to the classified memo, the initial draft cooked up by Department for External Church Relations concentrated on the current state of relations between Russia and the U.S. Now, let me explain to you what the article is about so it doesn't sound kind of stupid here. There was a big issue that came up where Kirill says Putin's people claimed Pope Francis was with them supporting Assad. And the answer is no. Pope Francis was never with President Putin in supporting Assad. In fact, when Assad sent to the Pope his reason for surrender back after the war first started, a couple of years afterwards, the Pope flatly denied it. He would not accept it. And I kept wondering, why would Assad send his letter of coming to a conclusion in this war to the Pope of Rome? Because he knows who controls the world. Well, what was going on here was the Russian president was wanting to get the support of Pope Francis on their side. So they make up this thing, says the suffering of Christians in the Middle East often has been exploited to advance the agendas of authoritarian governments, particularly those claiming to fight wars of terror. In recent years, Bashar al-Assad has used such sufferings as a way to discourage scrutiny of his atrocities, dispatching to Washington, for instance, loyalist Christian delegations to bear a single, uncomplicated message. Muslim extremists are the only cause for turmoil of war-ravaged country, and so implicated a secular dictatorship in the last line of defense for this embattled confessional minority. Now, of course, the guy writing the article hates Bashar al-Assad and accuses him of everything. But that's really not the point I'm really wanting to focus on here, and I don't agree with him, of course. I don't say that Assad is the most decorated, wonderful guy in the Middle East either. But the thing is what they were trying to do. They were trying to get the Pope on their side, and in doing so, they wanted to attach his name, and they did. They released a statement, Russia did, and they kind of attached Pope Francis along with that statement. It said last month, Vladimir Putin's presidential administration came up with the idea of a joint declaration, to be issued by Patriarch Kirill, the head of the Russian Orthodox Church, and Pope Francis, calling for peace and de-escalation by major powers in the Middle East. Sounds benign enough, but this appeal was part of a broader initiative by the Department of External Church Relations, a kind of ecumenical forum ministry for the ROC. Putin's office had instructed it to use wide international network to support the Kremlin policy in Syria, to support the Assad regime, according to the classified intelligence memo provided to the Daily Beast by Western Security Service. The memo cited an anonymous source within the ROC. The campaign, the Russian presidential administration believed would rely on the support or at least positive comments from the Holy See. All right? But watch what the Pope does. Now this is where it gets interesting, friends, because it lets you know how much power the Pope of Rome has over the government officials of this earth, right? Pope Francis wisely was wary of attaching his name alongside that of Patriarch Kirill. According to the classified memo, the initial draft cooked up by the Department for External Church Relations concentrated on the current state of relations between Russia and the U.S. and emphasized the need for a meeting between Presidents Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin to resolve the crisis in Syria, referencing it as an underlying premise Assad's supposed stature as a protector of religious minority. The Vatican, according to the memo, countered that, and it wanted at least 5 of the patriarchs of Eastern Christianity and local Catholics, heads of church, to be involved, especially Bartholomew of the Archbishop of Constantinople. And I won't get into the rest of that. But the point is he wanted to see Donald Trump and Putin meet. They needed to resolve the crisis in Syria. Now, it's really interesting because when you look at this and you look at the date of this particular report here, this was back in on May 21st. Now, ironically, it is the summit for the Helsinki summit here was actually was first announced on June 28th. 30 days later, they've got an announcement about a summit. The Pope is saying that these guys have got to resolve the issue first with Syria. He's not going to attach his name, and he's not going to do it unless, one, they have a summit and a meeting between these two, and on top of that, they've also got to include 5 other patriarchs in there as well. And then, ironically, once this meeting had been scheduled, then what do we have here? Well, Aman News, a Lebanon newspaper, which is very strong supportive of the the Roman Catholic Church, says Russian Orthodox Church, Vatican team up to rebuild Christian sites in Syria. Once the Pope had that meeting lined up and knew that they were going to do it before we ever knew about it in the news, then the Vatican is now willing to go along and be a part of the rebuilding of the churches there inside of Syria. That is on July the 8th, 2018. What do you know? Only about a week, as long as that meeting was announced that they're going to have it, the Pope makes sure the 2 boys are going to go do what they're supposed to do, and after all, stir up a whole lot of other garbage about Russia and the United States so that we can guarantee we have to have a need for this national ID. New World Order ID is what they really should call it. Anyway, not to mention, and of course, kind of going into a different area here, the Pope is about to go to Ireland. That's a big thing coming up here. This came out on July 9th, 2018. The church brutalized Ireland's people have a right to protest against the Pope's visit, but they're being shot down by the politicians in that country. They're not wanting them to say a single word about the Pope's visit there. But the article here is very interesting. They go back in they go into the issue that in 1979, when Pope John Paul II visited the Republic of Ireland, approximately 2.7 million people, 79% of the population came out to honor him. But they talk about all the deaths of children at the hands that are in the hands of the Catholic authorities in their country, the mass unmarked graves of children that have been uncovered, all the unreal things that have happened. And even since the Vatican came into strong has more power there, that the legalizing of all the things that even the Catholic Church seems to be against, such as gay marriage, abortions, and everything else, all became legalized during the time that the Vatican got their strength and power over the Irish people there. Very interesting to see that, but that, of course, that's a little off subject there, but I wanted to throw this in there because I happened to see this. This is another thing that came up that I think is important. In fact, before I go to that, let me jump over here to one other issue here. The Russian activist Butina pleads not guilty in Washington corruption bond courtroom, and her bond has been denied. She's a Russian national. They say she's a flight risk. I think it's a bunch of hogwash, and again, I think this is more for only something to be played that is to justify another need for the national ID card. You can count on it. They're going to blame her. They're going to say she's a spy. They're going to concoct all kinds of garbage up against this woman. And again, we are being played like a bunch of dumb sheep here to believe this is really all true. And after all, it's only about a New World Order ID. Now, jumping back over to this issue with Israel, U.S. Congressman says U.S. should recognize Israel's annexation of Syrians' Golan Heights. That's definitely going to come. You can count on it. It's going to be the next big thing to stir up tensions in the Middle East and try to cause an all-out war. They're not done, friends. They're not done. Very sad, but they are just not done, and it's not going to stop. Listen, guys, it's very troubling. I'm seeing New World Order written everywhere right now, and we are certainly being played. You know, definitely, listen, stand with us in this broadcast that we do. We're trying to really research deeply, and now that we're settled back in here in the U.S. as we're preparing for these conferences. And speaking of conference, let me pull up the conference here that is, or you know what, I don't have to do that. I can actually go right to our website here, IsraeliNewsLive.org. Or you can go to .co.il, Israeli. It'll just redirect you right over to IsraeliNewsLive.org. I did put the link up here on our website, Orlando Conference, August 4th, 2018. This is especially for those of you that are attending. If you click on this link here, you will get the hotel's address. You get the times of the meeting. It's on August the 4th from 6 p.m. to 10 p.m. Eastern. It is a one-day conference only. My wife and myself will be speaking at the meeting there. I will be sharing my role in the U.S. government and some of the things that we did there. We have very few limited seats left. We have already got, I think, 75 people have confirmed that they are coming to the meeting here just here in the first week. If you want to come, be sure, email me at stephenbennoon@gmail.com and put on there Orlando Conference in the subject line. If you're one of the 75 people that have written us already, I have emailed everyone back. Now, a couple of these people are coming in groups. I have one group here from Orlando that's coming, 12 people. I have this group listed in already, another group of like 5. If you're coming with your wife or your husband and you're just emailing me, which some people have emailed me back to let me know as husband and wife, be sure to let me know. We are limited to 100 people only. Now, if for some reason we were to see here by this weekend that we're going to get well over 100, I can try to contact the hotel and make the space larger. They said it was their off season and they did have plenty of room during that date, but it could already be booked up. I don't know. So I would really need to know that pretty quick to see if that availability were to be there. Also, if you would, consider supporting the broadcast, as I mentioned earlier, because there's a lot we're doing. We are doing a conference. L.A. Marzulli will be speaking with us out in Oregon. We're still trying to pinpoint the date, and they're trying to get a venue. It looks like October is when we'll be there. And we're hoping to be in September, possibly September, not sure as of yet, in Tennessee, around Nashville. Now, that's not a done deal as of yet. They're still praying about it, and we want to make sure it's the will of the Lord. I know we mentioned about going up towards North Carolina, Asheville, but I'm not sure when that's going to come around yet. We have not had the time to work that out because we've had these other 2 conferences being lined up right now. And I'm sure it's going to be a blessing, especially out in Oregon. It'll be a 2-day conference, and so because of being in Oregon, we won't actually go to Washington State or when we will not be going to anywhere into Northern California. We're trying to use that area to draw the people from both directions so we can limit where we go. Same thing with Nashville, Tennessee. It gives us the ability to pull people in from different areas. And we're also looking at a possibility of doing a conference in Kansas, if I'm not mistaken. My wife said we had someone contact us about Kansas. We still got a lot of work to do on putting everything together. Please be patient with us. If you're interested in hosting a conference where we can come and speak at, we would be glad to speak with you. It is very, very serious, though, the subjects that we're going into on this conference there. So I have to be very cautious about how we do it, where we do it, and the security that we use for these conferences. Mainly because the things that I'm getting into is really putting me at risk as well. I did speak a little bit more in depth on Patreon about that. Unfortunately, for some reason, something happened to that video, and I wished I had the file to it originally. It actually cut out, and for some reason we lost probably almost 20 minutes of that particular video I was doing on Patreon. So those of you that are on Patreon, I know the first 16 minutes of the video, you got the gist of what was really important that needed to be said there, but there was a lot more I said, and maybe that's just the grace of God. Maybe the Lord knew not everything should be up there as of yet. Keep us in your prayers there. Very serious things that's going on, and I think afterwards too, you'll have a better understanding of when I speak about things, I know a lot about what I'm talking about, especially when it comes to how crooked government officials, politicians, etc. really are in this country. And especially in light of this New World Order and those that are involved in dragging us into the New World Order. You would be surprised how many evangelicals are involved and could care less about you as a believer. They think in all sincerity that they are doing God a service. Very troubling. I'm Steve Ben-Nun with Israeli News Live, Erev Tov. IsraeliNewsLive.org is our web address, and it's right here on the screen. You can see it there. You can donate online there if you would like to do that, if God leads you to do that. And of course, our mailing address here in Orlando. And by the way, my wife has really been busy on writing people back. We'd really been behind on that, so we've been doing that, and she's trying to write people back each day, a group, so you should be getting letters back by now, and as well as those that contribute online. We thank you so much and for your help, because you are the ones that make it possible for us to say the things that we're saying. And Yana is going to be speaking very soon again, and even here on Israeli News Live, here on our broadcast here. Shalom, shalom, and good evening.